In the 1990s, Colin Ireland would terrorise London's gay community.
It is one of the most horrific and demanding murder inquiries for years.
Over 3 months, 5 innocent men would die at the hands of this cold and calculating killer.
He said the man he'd killed was gay.
Why are you doing this?
Colin Ireland would be christened the Gay Slayer and had set himself a unique goal.
He makes a New Year's resolution to himself that he's going to become a serial killer.
Ireland would snuff out the lives of his unsuspecting victims in a series of cruel and bizarre crimes.
The scene that met us there was just one of horror. Never seen anything like it before or since.
So was the Gay Slayer made into a monster, or was he born to kill?
I'm probably 60–70% quite a fairly reasonable human being most of the time. But there is that side of my character that is negative, that's quite cold and calculating.
This is the confession of Colin Ireland.
I strangled him. I had a bit of cord.
In 1993, he would take the lives of 5 men in a killing spree that frustrated police and struck fear into London's gay community.
Your advice to the gay community tonight?
Yes, quite simple. Be careful. Don't pick up a stranger. Don't go out on one-night stands. It's dangerous. You could be next.
The methods and motives for his evil actions would not be revealed until this frank and disturbing interview.
I went and got a plastic bag from the kitchen, carrier bag, and I stuck it over his head.
Ireland's life and crimes give us a unique insight into the mind of a serial killer and the 40-year journey that led him to make the cruelest of New Year's resolutions.
It's a destructive element to me that is highly destructive, highly cold, really, very cold, and I think in some moods I'd quite happy to burn the world down if it's possible.
Colin Ireland was born on March the 16th, 1954, and from day one his life would be full of disappointment and failure. Colin Ireland's father wanted no part in bringing up a child and left before he was even born.
Ireland never knew his biological father, and I think that's quite an important thing to note, because we have to remember what England was like in the early 1950s, where that kind of birth out of wedlock would be regarded very badly by the local community.
His 17-year-old mother was left with no money and no choice but to move back in with her parents in Myrtle Road, Dartford.
His mother was a very poor person.
On a number of occasions, Ireland's mother would move him in the hope that she would be able to settle with him in other accommodation.
She appeared to be very much into wanting to give him something that was good, wanting to make things good for him, but it didn't work out.
Colin Ireland's formative years were an unhappy time, filled with extreme hardship, upheaval, and poverty. Rent problems would sometimes lead to sudden moves.
I think he was probably really hurt by it. I'm sure any child would be, coming home from school and finding that their home is no longer their home and their mother has moved off somewhere.
So we've got a young man whose pattern of early life is characterized by movement, disruption, and an anxiety that somehow he doesn't quite fit in and that there are people talking about him.
In 1970, at the age of 16, Ireland fled to London, where he began to hang around at an amusement arcade with an unsavoury reputation.
We now know this is a particularly disreputable amusement arcade because it's targeted and frequented by paedophiles who will particularly target young boys what I think we begin to see is Ireland's association with sexual subcultures.
Most serial killers, men who kill men, are themselves gay. Most heterosexual serial killers kill women. What often happens in a case like this is that Ireland himself may be homosexual or may have a strong aspect of homosexuality to his personality, but can't accept it. He doesn't want to accept that. And so there's a part of him that he hates. And by killing others, he's sort of reassuring himself that he's not gay, that's not part of his personality.
Ireland's later teens were also to prove turbulent, and he began racking up an impressive criminal record, spending many periods in and out of both Borstal and prison.
I think he had a list of about 50 or 30 court appearances, all relatively minor offences to begin with. TDA, burglary, deception. He wasn't your GBH merchant, he wasn't your rapist, he wasn't your armed robber.
In between stints of incarceration, Ireland tries his hand at various jobs, but none lasted. One in particular, though, would yet again provide Ireland with a vital key to a specific community later on in life.
I believe he was a bouncer on a gay club in one job.
It's almost impossible to determine whether or not he himself was gay. What matters is Ireland's understanding of a number of gay sexual subcultures.
It was around 1981 when Colin met his first wife, and whilst he was working as a security guard, he befriended fellow worker Colin Brown.
He was a biggish guy and that. He seemed pretty quiet. Then once we got to know each other, then he started chatting and everything. And that was when I started going to his flat in Holloway. Colin's wife was in a wheelchair, Victoria. He seemed like he dozed over and that, you know what I mean? He couldn't do enough for her. When I went there, it was a pleasant home life, you know what I mean?
I think it's quite interesting that his first wife is disabled and he instead can dominate her because he's providing a caring service, as he would see it.
Ireland had seemingly got his life on track and was doing all he could to be a respected member of the community.
He and another man would patrol the local area where they were living.
We would go out late in the evening and we would have a torch and that, and if there was anything that we saw that maybe wasn't toward, we would report it to the local police.
There's always this sense of a kind of perverted moral hierarchy, a desire to be someone in a community, and of course performing the role as an informal neighbourhood patrol officer would give Ireland that sense of paying something back, that sense of having some standing.
Nevertheless, the harmonious, respectable life Ireland had constructed for himself crumbled just 5 years later after he was caught having an affair. But no one could foresee the tragic and brutal consequences of Colin Ireland's turbulent youth, criminal career, and brushes with London's gay community. In 1993, Colin Ireland would take the lives of 5 innocent gay men. But what was his motive for murder? Was the man who became known as the Gay Slayer born to kill? Ireland had an unstable childhood and a failed marriage. Then in 1989, on a survival weekend in Devon, he meets his second wife-to-be, Janet Young.
I first met Colin Ireland when I owned the Globe Inn pub where I live, and he came in as a customer. He stood in the doorway, dressed in camouflage, very impressive figure. The conversation just stopped dead in the pub as he came in the door.
Janet quickly falls for the stranger, although not everybody is immediately so keen on him.
My barmaid at the time, she didn't like him at all. She warned me off him right from the word go. She said, no, there's something not right. But I didn't feel that. I felt he was ideal for me in my situation, so he gradually moved in.
The customers didn't warm to Colin behind the bar, and neither did he feel happy serving them.
He hated being behind the bar. He wasn't really a very good mixer, although he was friendly. I think people in the pub found him a little bit scary because he was a very tall, big man. He was with me for about 3 months before he asked me to marry him. I wasn't sure that I wanted to get married, but he said, if we don't trust one another, then what's the point of being together? We had a small reception and a really fun day. He'd fitted in really well. My children were prepared to accept him being there. He liked being with them. I think it made him feel accepted and normal.
However, 4 months into the marriage, he proves that everything is far from normal. Ireland drives Janet and the kids to her mother's home for the weekend. They would never see each other again.
Ireland conforms to a classic psychopath, always taking from somebody what he needs to have so as to continue in the lifestyle that he wants.
I feel that certain sides of my character, not all of me, by any means, I mean, I'm probably 60–70% quite a fairly reasonable human being most of the time, but there is that side of my character that is negative, that's quite cold and calculating.
Ireland now has Janet and the kids safely out of the way.
Ireland will go back to the pub and take money from the pub, enough to set himself up again.
I was just shocked. I didn't know what had happened to him. I thought he'd been killed, run over, in hospital, arrested.
With over £10,000 of Janet's cash and their wedding photo album, Colin abandons her and his life behind the bar of the Globe Inn.
I realised he was probably just a con man all along, and I fell for it, and he was just looking for his opportunity to get what he could and go.
Travelling to Southend-on-Sea, Ireland once again begins to build a new life for himself. In 1991, he applies to be a volunteer at a local homeless shelter.
The moment Colin arrived at the night shelter as a volunteer, I do remember because he's a very, very large man, and he stood in the doorway and just advised me that he'd been sent by another agency. He was very passionate about the work that he did, probably more passionate than any of the other volunteers that we had. And he genuinely felt that he was paying society back after having behaved in various ways that he himself admitted were not very good.
For almost 6 months, life at the shelter seemed to be providing Ireland with all he needed to lead a fulfilled existence. But true to form, it wasn't to last.
Colin was a very calm person, but he was also a person that you felt immediately that you wouldn't want to upset.
Other volunteers don't like his manner, find him quite overbearing, find him frightening.
Volunteers and Ireland remain at loggerheads over the coming months, until one final incident seals his fate.
The assistant manager came to me and felt that Colin's behaviour on occasions wasn't appropriate, and she was rather concerned about this. That matter was taken to the committee, and they decided then that it probably would be a good idea to let Colin go. He felt that his dismissal was unfair and unjustified. He also felt that he had given back something to society, and basically that hadn't been recognised.
Once again, he finds himself rejected and on the fringes of society. For Colin Ireland, it's the final straw.
I believe that getting dismissed from the night shelter was crucial to his future. It was an absolutely crucial part of what happened to him and why he went on to do what he did.
To become the somebody he's always craved to be, Ireland will have to try a different tack.
He had read a book written by Robert Ressler called Whoever Fights Monsters, and therefore Ireland says he's going to become famous, he's going to become a somebody in the community. At that point, he makes a New Year's resolution to himself that he's going to become a serial killer.
On the 8th of March 1993, Colin Ireland arrives at the Colhern pub. Tonight he will begin his campaign of violence. Back in the early 90s, the Colhern was hugely popular with the gay community, and in particular the centre of a thriving S&M scene.
Colhern, back in the early 1990s, of an evening would be absolutely heaving. And you'd have people in here, clientele, who would identify whichever sexual proclivity was there to their taste, which made targeting by Colin Ireland extremely easy.
There were a whole series of signals. If you were into this, you'd wear this color handkerchief. If you were into that, you'd wear another one. If you had it in one pocket or another.
Most heterosexual men would feel uncomfortable going into a gay bar and speaking to someone who is gay and getting them to come with you. You would have to have some degree of comfort or experience in doing that.
And so it's his understanding of that subculture which gives him the passport to enter areas in London which were quite secret. And it's his understanding of that, having that passport, which allows him to kill repeatedly, time after time.
In a unique insight into a serial killer's mind, Colin Ireland explains during his police confession how the horrific events unfolded that evening when he killed and tortured his innocent victim.
I went to Colhern that evening. I felt if I was approached by one of that group type that tended to trigger these things in me, these masochistic men, I felt that time, I felt there was a likelihood that I would kill.
It's not long before Ireland is approached by theatre director Peter Walker. They strike up a conversation and travel back to Walker's flat together.
I went into the flat and I bound him I tied him to the bed.
Before killing Peter Walker, Ireland demands money from his now helpless victim, forcing Walker to reveal his bank card and PIN number by burning his testicles with a lighter.
I went and got a plastic bag from the kitchen carrier bag and I stuck it over his head.
As dawn approached, Colin Ireland left Walker's flat, withdrew £200 from a cash machine, and returned to his life in Southend.
Ireland was looking forward, I imagine, to reading about the death of Peter Walker in the papers, for it to be on the news, whether it was the local news or the national news. And of course, when Peter's murder doesn't make front page news, in fact, isn't even reported upon, Ireland takes it upon himself to do two things. First, he phones the Samaritans, and secondly, he phones the Sun newspaper.
I've personally taken thousands upon thousands of phone calls, and I've never taken a phone call like that. The guy sounded very normal, very ordinary, and was just started talking about two dogs locked in a flat. And I kept politely saying, I'm really sorry, but it's not a story for the Sun. And then he just suddenly dropped this bombshell that the reason he was actually phoning us was that he wanted the dogs to be freed because he'd killed their owner.
He didn't know it at the time, but the call Malinsky had just received marked the beginning of a vicious killing spree by one of Britain's coldest and most calculating serial killers.
He said the man he'd killed was gay and that he was interested in kinky sex, was the way he put it. I tried to keep him talking to get as much information as I could.
The police were alerted, and Detective Martin Finnegan rushed to the scene.
The door had been opened by the caretaker, So we got in without having to break any doors down. The dogs are in the lounge, and the bedroom was in disarray, as if it had been ransacked, the sort of thing you'd expect from a burglary.
It soon becomes apparent the phone call is no hoax. Before them lies the dead body of Peter Walker.
The body was discovered in the bed, and we knew that he had died at another person's hand.
The one other thing that the murderer had mentioned to me on the phone, he said he'd trussed him up like a chicken, is what he said to me on the phone.
He had a condom on his nose, condom in his mouth. He had 2 teddy bears placed on his chest in what was sort of 69 position.
From the post-mortem, we found out he died of asphyxia, inhaling his own vomit, so he'd been suffocated at some point, and we knew that ligatures had been removed after he was dead. So we're dealing with somebody who's a cool customer there.
The mysterious caller may have wanted to alert police to his crimes, but that didn't mean he wanted to be caught. He had left no clues and seemingly had committed the perfect murder. With the media finally reporting on Peter Walker's death and an investigation underway, Ireland lies low during the following weeks.
In most serial killing sprees, there is usually a wider gap between the first and the second murder. Usually the serial killer in that first murder gains psychologically what it is that he wants to gain out of that murder, and therefore doesn't feel the need to kill again particularly quickly.
The police struggle to find conclusive evidence to catch Walker's murderer, and for the time being the investigation stalls. So satisfied he has got away with it, Ireland returns to London to continue on his horrifying quest to become a serial killer. Having made a New Year's resolution to become a serial killer, Colin Ireland had already brutally murdered his first victim and was now ready to kill again, moving one step closer to his goal. On May the 28th, 1993, Christopher Dunn, a 37-year-old librarian, approached Colin Ireland at the bar of the Colhern.
Christopher Dunn is also somebody who is gay, interested in sadomasochism, is also somebody who frequents the Colhern pub, the pub where Ireland is going to have a passport to because he understands the codes, the subculture.
In his confession, Ireland would reveal just what a terrifyingly cold and calculated killer he'd become.
We got talking, realised he was the type. I went back to his place in North London, Willesden I think it was, and I'd gone quite prepared this time to kill them. And I bought a very inexpensive pair of handcuffs, and I was carrying a small torch, a maglite and a pouch, and a couple of other things, a lock knife and a Leatherman, which is like a multi-tool device. And I'd got a book and a pen, and I was going to have him repeat his PIN number. I strangled him. I had a bit of cord. On both of those occasions I stayed with the bodies until 6, half past 6 in the morning, because that was a vulnerable time, because I still had stuff on me that would have been a bit awkward if I'd been stopped by a policeman.
As dawn approached, Colin Ireland left the home of the now dead Christopher Dunn.
On the 28th of May, the body of Christopher Dunn was found in his home at Whetstone. And again, the scene was very staged. He was lying in a harness, naked except for the harness. He'd suffered ligature strangulation.
Even though before them lay a corpse, at the time, police didn't suspect foul play.
And I understand that inquiry led the police to believe that was a sex game that had gone tragically wrong, and there was no suggestion to believe it was anything other than a pure accident, and it was treated as such. It was not treated as a murder.
With 2 separate detective teams investigating the Walker and Dunn murders, the similarities between the cases were overlooked. 6 days later, and Ireland was back cruising the Colhern. He had seemingly got away with murder for a second time, and was looking for a new victim. This time, it was 33-year-old Perry Bradley who caught his eye.
Ireland had to persuade Bradley that, he should allow Ireland to tie him up.
We went back to the flat, and I don't think he was so much into the S&M, but I said I had to. So it's going to be a long night. I said I suggest you get some sleep if you can. And I just sat and listened to the radio, and he actually went to sleep. And while he was asleep, I throttled him with the noose, and he hardly struggled.
Ireland again sat up all night with just a corpse for company.
I think that affected me mentally to quite a degree. I think maybe if I'd have just killed these people and gone, I wouldn't have been affected mentally so much, but sitting in with these bodies for sort of like 5 or 6 hours on some occasions, watching them gradually sort of get blotchy as they do and cold, and it wasn't something that I don't think I could cope with, to be honest with you. I wasn't dealing with it too well.
In his quest to commit the perfect murder, Ireland treated the crime scenes carefully, revealing during his police confession how he had emulated a scene out of the TV police drama The Bill.
I got this one off The Bill, and that was taking the batteries out of the torch and wiping prints off of those and putting them back in with gloves on. You ought to ban that programme.
When Colin Ireland left the crime scene, he took with him every single thing that he touched.
So he doesn't want to leave blood, semen, hair, fibres, fingerprints.
As Ireland travels back to Southend-on-Sea, he disposes of incriminating items he removed from the home of Dunn by throwing them out of the moving train, where they would blend in with rubbish on the track below. Colin Ireland's New Year's resolution was coming together. He was fast approaching the serial killer status, which in his mind would catapult him into a world of infamy and repute.
Colin contacted me after he'd left the night shelter and asked if he could pop round for a cup of tea occasionally just to keep in touch. He told myself and my wife at the time that he was going on survival technique weekends. We subsequently found out that that wasn't the case. He was going to London to murder people.
On the 7th of June, just 3 days after Christopher Dunn's murder, Ireland again travelled by train from Southend to London, where he made his way to a familiar haunt, the Colhern.
For Colin Ireland to go back to the Colhern again just shows his degree of confidence he had in getting away with it. He'd clearly established a formula. He'd identified the secretive lifestyle of the clientele that frequented the Colhern, and with some confidence could say that his approach worked.
33-year-old Andrew Collier fatefully approached Colin Ireland. They struck up a conversation and soon left for Collier's flat. There, Ireland would engage in his most shocking behaviour yet.
When we eventually got into the flat at Andrew Collier's place, the scene that met us there was just one of horror. Never seen anything like it before or since. Andrew Collier was laying on his back with the cat draped across his chest. He was naked. In his mouth were 2 condoms, and on the cat's tail was a condom, and his penis had been put inside the cat's mouth and closed. If you can try and picture that, it's just so strange.
Not until Ireland's eventual confession did investigators truly understand why he had left the scene in such a bizarre way.
I felt real anger towards him, because he thought there was going to be a normal sexual encounter, which there wasn't going to be, and then had AIDS, and no time did he warn me. I was on a sort of almost like a roller coaster thing, and I felt, you know, there was more I was doing, you know.
While searching Andrew Collier's flat, Ireland discovers medical documents that reveal Collier is HIV positive.
He therefore, as a consequence of that knowledge, strangles Andrew Collier's cat, and he's going to engage in post-death behaviours in ways which are frankly quite disgusting. Ireland is trying to buy the public's sympathy by saying this man was not only gay and interested in sadomasochism, he was also HIV positive.
Colin Ireland had now brutally murdered 4 gay men, but there was still no media outcry. He was being denied recognition for his hard work, and Ireland could keep his silence no longer.
Ireland again injects himself into the police investigation. He's going to phone the police.
When Colin spoke to my colleague and CID officer at Battersea, he wanted to know why we'd stopped the investigation into Peter Walker.
He was losing out on fame and notoriety, so he named all of the victims and was quite adamant about the fact that he had killed all 4.
Why are you doing this? But why in particular homosexuals?
Colin said, I'm going to keep going till I'm caught. I'll do another one. I've always dreamed of doing the perfect murder.
The impact on police was absolutely immense. This was a huge inquiry now.
The police begin one of the biggest investigations in recent history, determined to catch the killer, who was not only targeting gay men, but also taunting the police as he did so.
It is one of the most horrific and demanding murder inquiries for years.
Scotland Yard suddenly went into this dramatic, madly, absurdly dramatic midnight press conference and this dramatic announcement that a serial killer of gay men was at large.
Advice to the gay community tonight.
Yes, quite simple. Be careful. Don't pick up a stranger. Don't go out on one-night stands. It's dangerous. You could be next.
By the middle of June 1993, despite the police's best efforts, Ireland has already struck again. Taunting the police with yet another phone call, Ireland suggests they look for a corpse at a house fire.
Eventually, a phone call came in from the police down in Lewisham saying that there's a flat with blackened windows and smoke billowing out, and inside was the body of a man who turned out to be Emmanuel Spiteri.
His 5th victim is a Maltese chef called Emmanuel Spiteri, and Ireland is going to make a mistake because he goes back yet again to the Culhern pub.
I didn't talk to him then. I saw him on the tube station a little bit later. Got talking to him then, and he said he'd seen me a couple of times in the Culhern and he was interested physically. We went via a couple of different train journeys to his flat. I put a noose around his neck. I then I reached a point where I couldn't have stopped myself anyway. It was almost like a steamroller effect. It was a steamroller, roller coaster, whatever.
Again, all the same methodology was used, the ligatures, the handcuffs. They were all removed after the murder, but this time, before he left, he stacked all the bedding and clothing in the centre of the room and set fire to it. Again, it was to heighten that impact on the investigators. I'm sure that's what it was for.
If you look at the crime scenes from number 1 to number 5, when he set fire to the house, to Spiteri's house, this was building up. So he said he was on a roller coaster, and I'm sure he was on a roller coaster.
But now the once careful killer was getting sloppy. He'd become uncontrollably addicted to murder.
Police hunting the killer of 5 homosexual men in London have been appealing for help at a big gay rights demonstration in the capital.
Colin Richardson, the then editor of Gay Times, remembers the effect the police investigation had on the gay community.
I vividly recall the Pride festival that year.
Tens of thousands of homosexuals streamed through central London in their annual gesture of pride and identity. But this year it was against a sombre background. Police and stewards handed out thousands of leaflets appealing for information about the serial killer who's murdered 5 times and is terrorising London's gay community.
There really was a palpable sense of fear. The press, of course, were making it much worse. I don't remember which paper it was, but one of them had a headline which was Fairy Liquidator. A lot of them latched onto the phrase gay slayer.
Got a serial killer on our hands, that's the bottom line, is that we need help to catch him.
Now the gay community was on high alert, but despite the massive police hunt underway, Colin Ireland was still at large. At the beginning of 1993, Colin Ireland made a cold and twisted New Year's resolution to become a serial killer. 6 months later, he has murdered 5 men in London and has so far managed to evade the huge police investigation that has been mounted against him.
I believe it was around about June that year. Colin came in, he sat down, we were watching TV, the news was on and there was a report about the killings in London. And Colin turned to me and said, you know, what do you think of this thing? And my reply was, oh, there's another nutter on the loose. Had no idea that it was him.
With the gay community on high alert and a profile of the killer beginning to emerge, the police get a break they so desperately need from a witness via the London gay policing group Gallup.
He gave us vital information around what he saw on the night in question that Spiteri was killed. He said he was at Charing Cross, that he saw them both together, that they sat on the train. There was 2 girls on the train as well. So on the train journey down to Hither Green from Charing Cross, the witnesses on the carriage on the train gave us an excellent AFIT and gave us a good description of Spiteri and Ireland.
Using the witness information, the police now know the route Ireland and Spiteri took on their return journey home. It's not long before they get a CCTV image of Spiteri, accompanied by a large man. The footage and EFIT are both immediately made public. Richard Higgs, Ireland's former colleague, remembers his friend's odd behaviour on what was to be his last visit.
He came into the house. It was an evening, I believe it was a Sunday evening. He was very anxious. He behaved very strangely, and we were really quite disconcerted by it, made to feel rather uncomfortable. And we really just wanted him to leave. Gave him a lift back to where he was living at the time. And he was talking in the third tense, talking very strangely. He was muttering and mumbling and very uncomfortable to be around, and we just wanted to get away from him, basically.
Ireland began to realise that it wouldn't be long before someone identified him from the images in the media and decided he had to take action.
Colin Ireland, at this stage, perhaps seen the writing on the wall, made contact to the police through his solicitor.
He had a prepared statement where it said, yes, I was the man with Spiteri. I did go to his home in Hither Green, but there was another man indoors. I didn't want a threesome, so I slept in the local churchyard and then came back to Southend.
So what we did is got some very fast cars down to Southend, so he was actually arrested at the solicitor's office.
Finally, the police are confident they have their man in custody, but Ireland believes detectives have nothing to go on.
He never opened his mouth.
He stared unblinking at me the whole time. It was very, very unnerving. The only reaction I got was when I told him we had a fingerprint of his at Andrew Collier's.
During the Andrew Collier murder, Ireland had made a massive mistake. At some point during the evening of Collier's death, there had been a disturbance outside the flat. Ireland had gone to the window to see what was happening, leaving behind a fingerprint.
It would have been out here where the disturbance took place, which drew Andrew Collier and Colin Ireland to the window, and where Colin Ireland left that fingerprint for police to find.
When he was confronted with the fingerprint evidence at the Andrew Collier scene, that picture would have told a story of guilt to the jury, I've got no doubt whatsoever, because he was totally flummoxed. He just couldn't believe that he had made a mistake.
Whilst on remand, Colin Ireland has time to assess his situation. He thought he'd been so careful not to leave any forensic evidence, but the fingerprint at Andrew Collier's flat had been a blow. The police are going to charge him with the murders of Andrew Collier and Emmanuel Spiteri, but may not have enough evidence to charge him for the other three.
He was on remand, I think, for about 4 weeks, when I think he probably contemplated on where does he go now, because it's falling out of the limelight. And he hasn't got the label that he wanted as a serial killer because he's only been charged with 2 murders. This just wasn't good enough for him. So he informed the prison officers that he wanted to talk to police, he wanted to admit all 5, and that's exactly what he did. And there he got his label as a serial killer.
Colin Ireland begins his full and chillingly honest confession to the murders of 5 men from London's gay community.
There's a clear narcissistic quality to Ireland. He wanted to take credit for this, and he was very proud of what he did, as are many of these serial killers. They're very pleased with themselves.
When this comes to trial, any judge worth his salt is going to find me guilty, and he will imprison me, and by doing so allow me to not offend again for some time.
Ireland's ultimate confession is simply because he wanted to achieve the goal that he set out to achieve through his December 1992 New Year's resolution. He wanted to become famous.
During the interviews, I think Colin Ireland had a certain amount of self-satisfaction that he was able to tell us, even at that late stage, things we didn't know. Only he could illuminate us into that, and he did. And I think that gave him a sense of importance, achievement, possibly even superiority.
On the 20th of December 1993, at the Old Bailey, Colin Ireland pleads guilty to the murder of all 5 men.
A serial killer who preyed on homosexuals has been jailed for life for murdering 5 men in London earlier this year. The judge recommended that he never be released, saying, "To take 1 human life is an outrage. To take 5 is carnage."
So what was it that drove Colin Ireland to kill? A man who patrolled the streets of his neighbourhood, who helped out at a homeless shelter.
Lots of people would say that he was a nice Colin Ireland who worked at the shelter in Southend and would never think anything of him like that.
It was another person. It just, well, it struck me dumb, you know. That's all I can say.
Really what I knew most about his mind is that he did like to be in control.
If you think about serial killers, one of the things they have in their sense is that they are helpful and kind. They just are, again, mimicking what they see the world expecting them to do.
I often wonder whether Colin Ireland was born to kill, or whether it was a result of his certainly early life.
Now, something must have happened a year, 2 years before that to trigger in his mind that here he is, I'm going to kill.
He wanted to achieve a goal that many serial killers want to achieve, which is that they want status.
Whatever the reason for Ireland's senseless murders, in the end, even he agreed he was a danger to the world. Colin Ireland had snuffed out the lives of 5 innocent, unsuspecting men. On the 21st of February 2012, in prison, he would die with the dignity he had denied his victims, aged 58, of natural causes.